The silver ship appeared in Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning, silent as a ghost. Nobody saw it coming. Not the satellites, not the space stations, not even the most advanced telescopes. It simply existed where nothing had been before, gleaming. Like a jewel against the black of space. Dr. Helen. Carter was drinking her third cup of coffee when the emergency alert came through. The phone buzzed on her desk at the United Nations building in New York, and her assistant's voice crackled through the speaker with barely controlled excitement. "Dr. Carter, you need to see this. The space agencies are going crazy. There's something up there." Helen set down her coffee and walked to the window. She could not see the ship with her naked eyes, but she knew it was there. After 30 years of diplomatic work, she had learned to trust her instincts. Something big was happening. Within an hour, the ship made contact. The message came through every communication system on Earth at the same time. Radio, television, internet, even old emergency broadcast systems that had not been used in decades. The voice was clear, speaking perfect. English with no accent. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Galactic Harmony Council. We have been listening to your signals for many years. Wish to meet with you in peace." The world stopped. Helen's phone rang constantly for the next 6 hours. Presidents, prime ministers, and leaders from every major nation wanted to know what to do. The United Nations Security Council called an emergency meeting. Military bases went on high alert. Scientists checked and rechecked their instruments, but the aliens waited patiently. Their ship hung in orbit, broadcasting the same message every hour. They wanted to talk. By evening, Helen found herself in the most important meeting of her life, the Security Council. Chamber was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. Translators worked frantically as arguments broke out in a dozen languages. "We should be careful," said the Russian ambassador. "We do not know what they want. They said they come in peace," replied the French representative. "We should give them a chance." "What if it's a trick?" asked the Chinese delegate. "What if they want to invade us?" Helen listened to the arguments and thought about the message. The aliens had said they were listening to Earth's signals for years. They knew about human civilization. They knew about wars, conflicts, and all the terrible things humans did to each other. Yet they still wanted to meet. "They could have attacked us already," Helen said, standing up. The room fell silent. "They have technology we cannot understand. They appeared in our orbit without warning. If they wanted to hurt us, they would have done it by now." The Secretary General, an elderly man named Martinez, nodded slowly. "Dr. Carter is right. We need to respond. The question is how." The debate continued for hours. Some wanted to send military representatives. Others suggested scientists. Few countries wanted to handle first contact themselves, ignoring the United Nations entirely. Finally, Martinez made the decision. "We will send a diplomatic team. Dr. Carter will lead it. We need people who can speak for all of humanity." Helen felt the weight of the world settle on her shoulders. Literally the next morning she met with her team. Dr. Paul Johnson was a linguistics expert from Harvard, was thin and nervous, always adjusting his glasses and taking notes. Lisa Martinez was a cultural specialist from the State Department. She was young but brilliant, with a gift for understanding how different societies worked. "So," Paul said, looking at the alien message for the 100th time, "what do we know about them?" "Not much," Helen admitted. "They call themselves the Galactic Harmony Council. They've been listening to our broadcasts. They want to meet." "The word choice is interesting," Lisa added. "Harmony suggests peace, cooperation. They could have called themselves an empire or a federation. They chose harmony." Helen nodded. "It's something at least." The aliens had requested that a small human delegation come to their ship. They provided coordinates and promised safe passage. Helen's team would be the first humans to leave Earth and meet another species. The night before departure, Helen could not sleep. She walked to her apartment window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, beings from another world were waiting to meet humanity. What would they think of humans? What would they learn about Earth and its people? She thought about human history, wars, violence, struggle, and suffering. But also art, music, love, and hope. Humans had done terrible things to each other, but they had also done beautiful things. They'd created literature and poetry. They'd built cities and cured diseases. They'd reached for the stars. The space shuttle launched at dawn.
Helen?
Paul and Lisa sat in the passenger compartment, watching Earth shrink below them. The alien ship grew larger as they approached. It was beautiful, like a piece of art floating in space. Its surface was smooth and curved, with no visible weapons or hard angles. "It looks peaceful," Lisa whispered. "Looks can be deceiving," Helen replied. But she hoped Lisa was right. The shuttle docked with the alien ship, and the airlock opened. Helen took a deep breath and stepped through. The first alien she saw was tall and graceful, pale blue skin and large silver eyes. It moved like a dancer, every gesture smooth and elegant. When it spoke, its voice was musical. "Welcome, humans. I am Veltar of the Etherian people. We are honored to meet you." Helen extended her hand in greeting, a gesture that seemed to surprise the alien. After a moment, Veltar reached out and gently touched Helen's palm with its long, delicate fingers. "I am Dr. Helen Carter, representing the people of Earth. We are honored to meet you as well." Veltar led them through the ship. The corridors were wide and bright, with walls that seemed to glow with soft light. Everything was clean and beautiful, like walking through a museum. "Your ship is amazing," Paul said, looking around in wonder. "It is a vessel of the Harmony Council," Veltar explained. "It was built by 12 different species working together. Each contributed their best knowledge and skills." They entered a large chamber filled with beings from different worlds. Helen saw creatures made of living crystal, others that looked like walking plants, and some that floated in the air like jellyfish. All of them watched the humans with curious eyes. "The Galactic Harmony Council," Veltar said with obvious pride. "We represent thousands of worlds, millions of species. We have lived in peace for over 10,000 years. Helen felt a chill. 10,000 years of peace. She thought about Earth's history, full of wars and conflicts. What would these peaceful beings think of humanity? A creature made of what looked like living diamond approached them. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "I am Crixanok of the Zephyrian people. We have studied your broadcasts with great interest. Your species is ... unique." "Unique how?" Helen asked. "Your world," Crixanok said carefully, "is very different from ours. You have faced many challenges. Your history is full of struggle." Helen felt the weight of those words. The aliens had been listening to Earth's broadcasts for years. They knew about human wars, about violence and conflict. They knew what humans were capable of. "We have had our difficulties," Helen said diplomatically, "but we have also achieved great things. We have art, music, literature. We've explored space and cured diseases. We have learned to work together." Veltar's large eyes studied Helen carefully. "Yes, we have seen this too. Your species is ... complicated. You create beauty and destroy it. You fight each other and then sacrifice yourselves for strangers. You are unlike any species we have encountered." The meeting continued for hours. Helen and her team answered questions about Earth, about human culture and history. They tried to present humanity in the best possible light, emphasizing achievements and progress while downplaying conflicts and wars. But Helen could sense something in the aliens' reactions. They were fascinated by humanity, but also worried. They had never met a species like humans before. They had never encountered beings who had survived by fighting, who had turned struggle into strength. As the meeting ended, Veltar made an offer. That changed everything. "The Harmony Council would like to invite humanity to join us, to become part of our peaceful alliance. But first, we must understand your people better. We invite you to visit our station, to learn about our ways and teach us about yours." Helen looked at her team. Paul was excited, already thinking about the linguistic opportunities. Lisa was fascinated by the cultural exchange possibilities. They both nodded. "Double quotes, we accept your invitation," Helen said. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow," Veltar replied. "Prepare yourselves, humans. You are about to see wonders beyond your imagination." "It is." They returned to the shuttle. Helen felt both excitement and worry. The aliens seemed peaceful and genuinely interested in friendship, but she had noticed something in their eyes when they looked at humans. It was not fear exactly, but something close to it. The humans were about to join a galactic civilization that had known only peace for thousands of years. What would happen when they met a species forged by conflict, shaped by struggle, and hardened by survival? Helen had a feeling they were about to find out. The Harmony Station appeared in the viewport like a floating city of light. Helen Carter pressed her face against the window of the transport ship and stared in wonder. The station was enormous, easily the size of Manhattan, but it looked nothing like any human structure she had ever seen. Delicate spires twisted upward like frozen waterfalls. Bridges of pure light connected floating platforms. Gardens hung in impossible spirals, defying gravity. The whole structure pulsed with soft colors that shifted from blue to green to gold. "It's beautiful," Lisa Martinez whispered beside her doctor. Paul Johnson was frantically taking notes, his glasses reflecting the station's glow. "The architecture is completely open. No defensive walls, no barriers. It's like they never considered the need for protection." Helen nodded, but something about the station's openness made her uncomfortable. Where she saw beauty, her diplomatic training saw vulnerability. The station had no shields, no weapons, no fortifications. It was completely exposed to attack. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been assigned to pilot their shuttle, joined them at the window. He was a quiet man with gray hair and steady hands. He had flown military missions for 20 years before joining the civilian space program. "Interesting design," he said simply, but Helen caught the way his eyes tracked the station's structure. He was doing what she was doing, looking for weaknesses and strengths. Their transport docked at a port that seemed to be made of living coral. The walls rippled and shifted to accommodate their ship. Helen stepped through the airlock and immediately felt the difference. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, making her feel like she might float away. The air smelled like flowers and rain. Soft music played from somewhere, though she could not see any speakers. Everything was designed to be peaceful and welcoming. Veltar waited for them, along with several other beings Helen did not recognize. One looked like a walking tree with silver bark and leaves that chimed in the breeze. Another was a creature of living water that flowed and shifted as it moved. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Veltar said, its musical voice echoing in the vast space. "This is the heart of our civilization. Here, all species meet as equals." The tree creature stepped forward, its branches rustling. "I am Seed Keeper. These is of the Verdanian people. We are honored to host the first humans at our station." Helen smiled and extended her hand, as she had done with Veltar. But Thesis recoiled, its branches pulling back sharply. The other aliens around them shifted nervously. "I apologize," Helen said quickly, pulling her hand back. "I meant no offense. Among humans, we shake hands as a greeting of friendship." Veltar's large eyes studied Helen carefully. "Your gesture is aggressive by our standards. You move quickly. Make direct contact. Show dominance through strength." A hand blinked in surprise. A handshake was aggressive. She looked at her team and saw the same confusion on their faces. "We don't mean to be aggressive," Paul said, adjusting his glasses. "It's just how we greet each other," of course, Veltar said gently. "We understand that different species have different customs. Come, let us show you the station." They followed Veltar through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The station was like a living thing, with walls that breathed and floors that adjusted their texture for comfort. Everything was soft, curved, and gentle. But Helen noticed other things too. The doors had no locks. The corridors had no security cameras. Valuable equipment sat unguarded in open spaces. Children of various species played freely without supervision. "Where are your guards?" Helen asked. Veltar looked puzzled. "Guards? What are guards?" "Security personnel," Helen explained. "People who protect the station from danger?" "What danger?" the water creature asked, its voice like flowing streams. "We are all friends here. There is no danger." Helen exchanged glances with Captain Morrison. Expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. A military man's instincts were screaming at him in a place like this. They entered a large chamber filled with beings from dozens of different worlds. The room was set up like an amphitheater, with comfortable seating arranged in circles. The center was a raised platform where speakers could address the group. "This is our council chamber," Veltar explained. "Here we discuss matters of importance to all species. Today, we have prepared a special session to welcome humanity." Helen took her place on the platform, feeling hundreds of alien eyes watching her. She had given diplomatic speeches before, but never to an audience like this. She cleared her throat and began. "People of the Harmony Council, we are honored to be here. Humanity has dreamed of meeting other intelligent species for thousands of years. Today, that dream comes true." The audience listened politely, but Helen could sense their unease. Her voice was too loud for them to direct. Her posture was too straight, too confident. Everything about her presence seemed to make them nervous. Paul stepped forward to continue the presentation. "We have brought examples of human culture to share with you. Our art, our music, our literature." He activated a holographic display that showed images from Earth, paintings by great masters, sculptures, architecture, music. The aliens watched with fascination, but Helen noticed their reactions. They loved the peaceful images. Gardens, landscapes, portraits of children. But when the display showed more dramatic art, paintings of battles, or sculptures of heroes, the aliens shifted uncomfortably. "This image," said a crystalline being, pointing to a painting of a warrior. "What is its purpose?" "It depicts courage." Paul explained, "the human spirit overcoming impossible odds." "But why does your art celebrate violence?" asked another alien, this one resembling a giant butterfly with rainbow wings. Paul paused, unsure how to answer. "It's not celebrating violence. It's celebrating the human will to survive, to protect others, to fight for what's right." The aliens exchanged glances. Helen could see they did not understand. To them, fighting was something to be avoided, not celebrated. Lisa stepped forward to help. "Perhaps I can explain through our stories. Humans have always told tales of heroes who face great challenges." She began to tell the story of a hero who saved his village from a terrible monster. But as she spoke, Helen noticed the aliens becoming more and more uncomfortable. They did not understand why the hero had to fight. Couldn't he just talk to the monster? Why couldn't they all live in peace? The session continued for hours, but it was clear that something was wrong. The aliens tried to be polite, but Helen could see the fear in their eyes. They were beginning to understand what humans really were. During a break, Helen walked to an observation deck with Captain Morrison. They looked out at the peaceful station, watching alien children play in the gardens. "They're scared of us," Helen said quietly. Morrison nodded. "I can't blame them. We're probably the first species they've met that evolved by fighting." "But we're not monsters," Helen protested. "We've learned to live in peace. We've built the United Nations. We've worked together to solve problems." "Have we?" Morrison asked. "When was the last time Earth went a full year without a war somewhere?" Helen fell silent. He was right. Even now, in 2024, there were conflicts around the world. Small wars, terrorist attacks, civil unrest. Humanity had never truly known peace. They returned to the council chamber for the evening session. This time, the aliens had prepared questions for the humans. The questions started simple, but quickly became uncomfortable. "How many wars has humanity fought?" asked Crixenok, the diamond being. Paul consulted his notes. "That's hard to say. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands throughout our history." Aliens gasped. "Some actually moved away from the humans." "How many of your own species have you killed?" asked Thesis, the tree creature. "We don't keep exact records," Helen said carefully. "But the number is ... significant." "Do you still kill each other?" asked a floating jellyfish being. Helen hesitated. "Sometimes we're working to end such conflicts, but we haven't succeeded yet." The questions continued. The aliens wanted to know about human weapons, about armies, about the concept of war itself. They had words for disagreement and competition, but not for organized violence between groups. The session ended with an uncomfortable silence. The aliens were polite but distant. They had invited diplomats to their station, but they were beginning to realize they had gotten something else entirely. That night, Helen lay in her quarters, staring at the ceiling. The room was beautiful, with walls that showed peaceful scenes from various worlds. But she could not shake the feeling that she was in a cage, being studied by beings who did not understand her species. Paul knocked on her door. "Helen, we need to talk." She let him in, along with Lisa and Captain Morrison. They sat together in the comfortable alien furniture, but no one looked comfortable. "They're going to reject us," Lisa said quietly. "They think we're too violent." "Maybe we are," Paul said, taking off his glasses and cleaning them nervously. "Maybe we don't belong here." Helen looked at her team. They were good people, peaceful people. But they carried the weight of human history with them. Every handshake, every confident gesture, every story of heroism reminded the aliens of what humans were capable of. "We can't change what we are," Helen said finally, "but we can show them who we choose to be." Captain Morrison spoke up. "The question is, do they want to see it, or have they already made up their minds?" The morning brought unexpected news. Helen Carter woke to find Veltar waiting outside her quarters, accompanied by a new alien she had not met before. This one was tall and thin, with purple skin that seemed to shimmer like oil on water. "Doctor Carter," Veltar said, its musical voice carrying an odd note of excitement. "I would like you to meet Ambassador Synthara of the Catherian people. She has a wonderful opportunity for your delegation." Synthara stepped forward, her movements graceful and flowing. When she spoke, her voice was like whispered wind. "Greetings, human. We have been observing your species with great interest. Your approach to problem-solving is ... unique."
Oh.
Helen felt a chill at those words. What kind of opportunity? "A simple, diplomatic exercise," Synthara explained, her large eyes gleaming. "We have a small dispute that needs resolution. We thought it would be perfect for your team to practice your skills." Helen gathered her team in the station's conference room. The chamber was circular, with walls that displayed peaceful scenes from various worlds. Paul Johnson sat nervously adjusting his glasses, while Lisa Martinez reviewed her notes. "Captain!" Morrison stood quietly by the window. Watching the alien ships come and go, Synthara activated a holographic display that showed a star system with several planets and an asteroid belt. "This is the Kepler 442 system. Two species have competing claims to the mineral rights in the asteroid belt." The display zoomed in to show the asteroids floating in space. They were rich in rare metals that both species needed for their technology. "The mollusk people discovered the asteroids first," Synthara continued. "But the insectoid people have better mining technology. Both have valid claims under different sections of galactic law." Helen studied the display. It seemed straightforward enough. "What's the current situation?" "Both species have filed complaints with the Harmony Council. They are waiting for mediation. The dispute has been ongoing for 3 years now." 3 years? Paul asked in surprise. "For a simple mining rights dispute?" Synthara's expression flickered. "We prefer to take our time with such matters. Patience leads to better solutions." Helen looked at her team. 3 years seemed like an incredibly long time for something this simple. But if the aliens wanted to see how humans handled diplomacy, this was their chance. "We'll take the case," Helen said. Within an hour, representatives from both species arrived at the station. The mollusk people were exactly what their name suggested. Large, soft-bodied creatures with shells on their backs. They moved slowly and spoke in bubbling voices. The insectoid people were tall, thin beings with multiple arms and compound eyes. They clicked when they talked and moved with quick, jerky motions. Helen met with each group separately first, a standard diplomatic practice. The mollusk representative, called Gerbil, explained their position in slow, patient tones. "We found the asteroids first. We have been mining them for 50 years. The metals are part of our traditional territory." The insectoid representative, named Clixer, was more agitated. "Their mining methods are inefficient. They waste resources. Can extract 3 times more material with our technology." Len took notes and asked questions. The more she learned, the more frustrated she became. This was not a complex dispute. It was a simple resource allocation problem with an obvious solution. She called her team together for a strategy session. "This is ridiculous," Lisa said, pacing around the room. "They've been arguing about this for 3 years when the solution is obvious." "What solution?" Paul asked. "Partnership," Helen said immediately. "The mollusk people have the legal claim and the experience. The insectoid people have the technology. They should work together." Captain Morrison nodded. "Joint venture. Split the profits. Both sides get what they need." "But why haven't they thought of this?" Paul wondered. Helen was beginning to understand. "Because they're not used to thinking like we do. They see conflict as something to be avoided, not something to be solved." The next day, Helen called both parties together for mediation. The conference room was filled with aliens from various species, all curious to see how humans handled diplomacy. Helen stood at the front of the room facing the two groups. The mollusk people sat on one side, moving slowly and speaking in low bubbles. The insectoid people sat on the other side, clicking and twitching nervously. "Thank you all for coming," Helen began. "I've reviewed both of your positions, and I believe we can reach a solution that benefits everyone." The room fell silent. Helen could feel dozens of alien eyes watching her. The mollusk people have a legal claim to the asteroid belt. This cannot be disputed. However, the insectoid people have technology that could increase extraction efficiency by 300%. She activated the holographic display, showing the asteroid belt. "I propose a joint mining operation. The mollusk people maintain legal ownership and provide operational oversight. The insectoid people provide technology and engineering expertise." The room erupted in surprised clicks and bubbles. The two groups looked at each other with what might have been shock. Profits would be split. "Lushadon Sisher," Helen continued. 60% to the mollusk people as the legal owners. 40% to the insectoid people as the technology providers. But ... Gerbil bubbled slowly. "We have never worked together before. Why not?" Helen asked. "You both want the same thing. You both need the resources. It's working together. You can get more than either of you could alone." Clixer's compound eyes focused on Helen. "This is ... possible?" "More than possible," Helen said firmly. "It's the logical solution. You establish a joint company. You share costs, share risks, share profits. Everyone wins." The alien observers began murmuring among themselves. Helen could see Veltar and Synthera watching with wide eyes. "What about our cultural differences?" Gerbil asked. "What about them?" replied. "The mollusk people are patient and careful. The insectoid people are quick and efficient. Those are strengths, not weaknesses. You complement each other." She turned to the display again. "You establish joint facilities on 3 main asteroids. Mollusk supervisors oversee safety and environmental concerns. Insectoid engineers handle extraction and processing. You rotate shifts to accommodate both species' work preferences." The two groups looked at each other uncertainly. Helen could see they were considering the proposal, but they seemed almost afraid to accept it. "I need time to think," Gerbil said slowly. "Our hive mind must discuss this," Clixer added. "Take all the time you need," Helen said. "But remember, every day you delay is another day of lost profits for both of you." The meeting ended with the two groups agreeing to consider the proposal. Helen felt confident they would accept. The solution was too obvious to ignore, but as the aliens filed out of the room, she noticed something strange. The observers were not celebrating or praising her diplomatic skills. They looked worried, even frightened. Veltar approached her slowly. "Dr. Carter, may I speak with you privately?" They walked to a quiet corner of the station, where a garden area provided privacy. Veltar's usual musical voice was strained. "Your solution to the dispute," Veltar said carefully. "It is very ... direct. It's effective," Helen replied. "Both sides get what they need. You forced them to make a decision. You pressured them." Helen frowned. "I presented them with options. They're free to accept or reject the proposal." "Are they?" Veltar asked. "Your manner, your confidence, your certainty, it is very intimidating. They feel compelled to agree." Helen stared at the alien. Are you saying I'm bullying them? I am saying that your approach is unlike anything we have seen before. You identify the core problem, eliminate unnecessary complications, and impose a solution. It is ... frightening. Efficient, Helen said defensively. Why waste 3 years on something that can be solved in 3 hours? Because Veltar said quietly, we believe that the process is as important as the result. We take time to ensure everyone feels heard, everyone feels valued. We do not force solutions. Helen felt a growing sense of unease. You think I'm being too aggressive? I think you are being very human, Veltar replied, and that is what worries us. The next day brought news that both species had accepted Helen's proposal. The joint mining operation would begin within the month. The 3-year dispute was resolved in 24 hours. But instead of celebration, Helen found herself facing a hastily called meeting of the Harmony Council. The chamber was packed with alien representatives, all talking in worried tones. Synthara stood at the center of the room, her purple skin shimmering with agitation. Fellow beings, we have witnessed something unprecedented. Humans have resolved. Our test dispute with shocking efficiency? Test dispute? Helen felt a chill run down her spine. This was not a real mediation, Synthara continued. It was meant to be a simple exercise, a way for the humans to practice their diplomatic skills on a minor, harmless disagreement. The room erupted in surprised sounds from various species. Helen realized she had been set up. But the humans approached. It like a real conflict, Synthara said. They analyzed the situation, identified weaknesses, and imposed a solution with ruthless efficiency. They turned our peaceful exercise into something resembling ... warfare. Jean stood up, her face flushing. With anger? Warfare? We solved your problem. Both sides are happy. The alarm woke Helen Carter from restless sleep. Red lights flashed in her quarters as a voice echoed through the station's communication system. The voice was different from the usual gentle tones she had grown used to. This voice was sharp, authoritative, and unmistakably military. All personnel report to designated safety zones. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Helen quickly dressed and found her team in the corridor. Paul Johnson looked confused and frightened, while Lisa Martinez was trying to make sense of the alien announcements. Captain Morrison stood calmly, but Helen noticed his posture had changed. His shoulders were squared, his eyes alert. His military training had kicked in. What's happening? Helen asked. A passing alien, one of the floating jellyfish beings. The peacekeepers have arrived, it replied, its voice trembling with what might have been fear or excitement. They are here to assess the human situation. Through the large windows, Helen could see ships approaching the station. They were different from the elegant, artistic vessels she had seen before. These ships were angular, functional, and clearly designed for combat. They moved in precise formations, their hulls gleaming with what looked like armor plating. Peacekeepers? Paul asked, adjusting his glasses nervously. The Harmony Council's military force, Helen replied, remembering her briefings. Though from what I understood, they barely qualify as military by our standards. The lead ship docked with the station, and Helen felt the structure shudder slightly. Within minutes, alien soldiers began filing through the corridors. They moved in organized groups, wearing what appeared to be ceremonial armor that gleamed in the soft station lighting. The soldiers were led by a tall, imposing figure that Helen recognized as belonging to the Valdorian species. She had seen images of them in the station's cultural database. They were the most warlike race in the Harmony Council, though their concept of warfare was very different from humanity's. The leader approached Helen's group, flanked by 2 other soldiers. When he spoke, his voice was deep and carried an accent. Helen could not place. I am Commander Zekar of the Valdorian Peacekeepers. You are the human delegation. It was not a question. Helen stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. I am Dr. Helen Carter, representing Earth. These are my colleagues. Zakara's eyes, a deep purple color, studied each human carefully. You will come with us. The Council wishes to conduct a formal assessment of your species' threat level. Threat level? Helen asked, but she already knew the answer. The aliens had decided that humans were dangerous. They were escorted to a large chamber that Helen had not seen before. Designed for more serious meetings than the peaceful discussions she had witnessed earlier, the walls were reinforced, the lighting was brighter, and there were obvious security measures in place. The chamber was filled with peacekeepers from various species. Helen counted at least 50 soldiers, all watching the human delegation with intense curiosity. At the center of the room was a raised platform surrounded by energy barriers. "Please step onto the platform," Zeker commanded. Helen looked at her team. They were scared, but they were also angry. This was not how diplomats were supposed to be treated. "Are we under arrest?" Helen asked. "You were under assessment," Zeker replied. "The Council must determine whether your species poses a threat to galactic peace." They stepped onto the platform, and Helen felt a tingling sensation as the energy barriers activated. They were not trapped, exactly, but they were clearly being contained for observation. Zakar activated a holographic display that showed images from Earth. Battles throughout human history, weapons, armies, cities destroyed by war. The images were selected to show humanity at its worst. "Your species has engaged in constant warfare for thousands of years," Zekar said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "You have developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. Have killed billions of your own kind." Helen felt her anger rising. "That's not the whole story, is it not?" Zekar challenged. "Your own broadcasts show nothing but violence and conflict. Your entertainment glorifies war. Your heroes are warriors and killers. Our heroes are protectors," Helen shot back. "People who sacrifice themselves to save others by killing," Zakar said simply. "Your solution to every problem is violence." Captain Morrison stepped forward. Helen had been wondering when he would speak up. His voice was calm, but she could hear the steel beneath it. "Commander, with respect, you don't understand what you're looking at." Zeker's purple eyes fixed on Morrison. "Enlighten me, human. You're showing us images of war, but you're not showing us why we fought. You're showing us weapons, but you're not showing us what we used them to defend." Morrison gestured to the holographic display. "That battle there from our Second World War. We fought that war to stop a genocide. Millions of innocent people were being murdered. We could have stayed safe, stayed out of the conflict. Instead, we chose to fight and die to save strangers." Peacekeepers shifted uncomfortably. Helen could see that Morrison's words were having an effect. "And that weapon," Morrison continued, pointing to an image of a nuclear missile. "Yes, it's terrible. But do you know what we did with it? We used it to end the worst war in our history. And then we spent the next 80 years making sure it was never used again." Dr. Paul Johnson found his voice. "You're judging us by our worst moments, but what about our best? What about the times we worked together to cure diseases, to explore space, to help each other after disasters? What about our art?" Lisa added. "Our music that celebrates love and hope? Our stories that teach children to be kind and brave?" Zakar listened to their words, but his expression remained stern. "Words are easy, humans." Zakar's revealed truth. "And your actions speak of a species that solves problems through violence?" "Sometimes violence is the only solution," Helen said quietly. "Sometimes there are people who cannot be reasoned with, who cannot be negotiated with. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to fight." The chamber fell silent. Helen could see the peacekeepers exchanging glances, communicating in ways she could not understand. "You do not deny your violent nature," Zakar observed. "We don't deny our nature," Helen replied, "but we choose how to use it. We choose to protect rather than conquer. We choose to build rather than destroy. Do you?" Zakar activated another display, this one showing recent conflicts from Earth. "Your species still wages war. Even now, as you speak to us of peace, your people fight each other." Helen felt the truth of his words like a physical blow. He was right. Earth was not at peace. There were conflicts, terrorism, civil wars. Humanity had not transcended its violent nature. "We're not perfect," she admitted. "We're still learning. But we're trying to be better. Are you?" Zekar asked. Or are you simply looking for new enemies to fight? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Helen realized that this was the moment of truth. The aliens were not just assessing humanity's threat level. They were trying to understand what humans would become if they joined the galactic community. Captain Morrison spoke again, his voice steady and certain. Commander, let me ask you something. If this station was attacked right now, what would? You do? Zekar's expression hardened. We would defend it. How? With our weapons, with our ships, with our lives if necessary. Then you understand us, Morrison said simply. The only difference is that we've had to defend ourselves our entire existence. You've had the luxury of peace. We've had to fight for it. The peacekeepers around the chamber began murmuring among themselves. Helen could see that Morrison's words were causing debate. But what if your enemy could be reasoned with? Zekar asked. What if violence was unnecessary? Then we would reason with them, Helen replied. We would negotiate. We would compromise. We would find a peaceful solution, just like we did with your mining dispute. But you forced that solution, Zekar pointed out. Did not give them time to find their own way. Because their way wasn't working, Morrison said bluntly. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. Sometimes you have to act quickly to prevent greater harm. The chamber erupted in discussion. Peacekeepers from different species argued among themselves, their voices rising in various languages and tones. Helen could not understand the words, but she could sense the conflict. Zekar raised his hand for silence. The debate will continue, but first, we must see your true nature. He activated another holographic display, this one showing a star system Helen did not recognize. In the center was a space station, smaller than Harmony Station but clearly inhabited. This is Research Station Omega-7, Zekar explained. It houses 3,000 scientists and their families. 15 minutes ago, it was struck by a massive solar flare. Their power systems are failing. Their life support will last no more. Then 6 hours? Helen felt her heart racing. What does this have to do with us? Our rescue ships are 12 hours away, Zekar continued. Too far to help. But your ship, the one that brought you here, could reach them in 4 hours. Helen looked at her. Team. She could see the understanding in their eyes. This was the real test. Are you asking us to help? She asked. I am asking you to choose, Zekar replied. You could take your ship and leave this station, return to Earth, avoid the complications of galactic politics. The human ship New Horizon detached from Harmony Station with a shudder that Helen Carter felt in her bones. Captain Jake Morrison's hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency as the ship turned toward the distant research station. 4 hours to reach them, Morrison announced.
Oh.
But we'll need to push the engines beyond safe limits. Helen strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat, watching the stars blur past as they accelerated. Behind her, Paul Johnson and Lisa Martinez checked their equipment. They had volunteered to help with the rescue, despite having no training for such operations through the communication system. They could hear transmissions from Research Station Omega-7. The voices were calm but desperate. Scientists from 3 different species were working together to keep their station alive. But their power systems were failing faster than expected. This is Dr. Zendel of the Etherian research team, came a familiar musical voice. Life support is now at 60%. We estimate 3 hours remaining. Helen felt her stomach clench. They would arrive just in time if everything went perfectly. There was no room for error. On the main screen, she could see other ships converging on their position. Peacekeeper vessels were following them, along with what looked like civilian rescue ships. Commander Zekar's voice came through the communication system. Human vessel, you are not equipped for rescue operations. We advise you to wait for proper support. Morrison keyed the microphone. Commander, with respect, those people don't have time to wait for proper support. Your ship lacks the necessary equipment, Zekar insisted. You have no medical facilities, no emergency life support systems. We have what we need, Morrison replied simply. We have determination. Helen could hear the frustration in Zekar's voice when he responded. Determination is not enough. You cannot save them through willpower alone. But Morrison was already proving him wrong. The ship's engines roared as he pushed them beyond their design limits. Warning lights flashed on the control panel, but Morrison ignored them. His focus was absolute. "Paul," Lisa Helen called back to her team, "what do you have for emergency supplies?" They had spent the last hour gathering everything they could find. Emergency oxygen tanks, medical kits, portable power, cells, even food and water from the ship's stores. It was not much, but it was what they had. "We're carrying supplies for maybe 100 people, Lisa reported. "The station has 3,000. "Then we'll make multiple trips," Helen said firmly. "We'll do whatever it takes." The hours passed. Slowly, Helen watched the scanner as they approached the damaged station. It was spinning slowly, dark patches showing where power had failed. She could see debris floating around it, pieces of equipment blown off by the solar flare. There, Morrison pointed to a section that still showed lights. It's where the survivors are concentrated. As they drew closer, Helen could see the full extent of the damage. The station's hull was cracked in several places. Solar panels hung loose like broken wings. The main docking bay was sealed, but emergency airlocks were still functional. "New Horizon, this is Research Station Omega-7, came a new voice, this, one belonging to one of the insectoid species. "We read your approach. Are you here to help?" "We're here to get you out," Morrison replied. "How many people can you get to the emergency airlocks?" "Perhaps 50 at a time," the voice replied. "But your ship cannot carry 50 people." Morrison looked at Helen. The ship was designed for a crew of 6. They could squeeze maybe 20 people into the cargo hold if they removed the safety barriers. "We'll take 20 at a time," Helen decided. "Make the trips we need to make." "We'll require 15 trips," Paul calculated quickly. "We don't have time." Helen was about to respond when new voices came through the communication system. Other ships were arriving. Peacekeeper vessels, civilian transports, even merchant ships that had heard the distress calls. "This is Commander Zecker," came the familiar voice. "All vessels, coordinate your rescue efforts with the human ship." Helen was surprised. She had expected the peacekeepers to take over the operation. "Commander, we're not equipped to coordinate." "A major rescue," she said. "No," Zecker replied, and she could hear something new in his voice. "But you were equipped to lead one." The next few hours became a blur of activity. Helen found herself directing a fleet of rescue ships, coordinating their efforts to evacuate the failing station. She had never done anything like this before, but somehow it felt natural. Morrison's ship made trip after trip, carrying survivors to safety. Each time they docked with the station, Helen could see the fear in the aliens' eyes. But she also saw something else: trust. They knew the humans were risking their lives to save them. On the third trip, disaster struck. A secondary explosion rocked the station as they were loading passengers. The emergency airlock began to fail, and Helen could see the metal bending. "Under the pressure, everyone out," Morrison shouted. "The airlock won't hold." There were still people on the other side, trapped by the damage. Helen could see them through the failing seal. A group of Etherian children and their teacher. Without thinking, Helen grabbed an emergency oxygen mask and pushed through the failing airlock. The metal groaned and sparked around her as she reached the trapped group. "This way," she called, leading them back toward the ship. The airlock was collapsing, but she guided the children through one by one. The teacher, the elderly Etherian with silver skin, was the last to go. As Helen pushed her toward safety, a beam collapsed, striking Helen in the shoulder and sending her to the ground. "Leave me," Helen gasped, pain shooting through her body. "Get them out." But the Etherian teacher stopped. Instead of fleeing to safety, she turned back and helped Helen to her feet. Together they stumbled through the collapsing airlock just as it finally gave way. Morrison pulled them aboard and the ship accelerated away from the station. Behind them, the section they had just evacuated exploded in a shower of debris. "Why did you come back for me?" Helen asked the Etherian teacher as Lisa bandaged her injured shoulder. The teacher's large eyes studied Helen with something that might have been wonder. "Because that is what you would have done for us," she said simply. The rescue operation continued for 2 more hours. Ship after ship arrived to help, coordinating their efforts under Helen's direction. peacekeepers worked alongside civilian vessels. Species that had barely spoken to each other before found themselves cooperating to save lives. When the last survivor was evacuated, Helen slumped in her chair, exhausted. They had saved everyone. All 3,000 inhabitants of Research Station Omega-7 were alive and safe. Commander Zekker's ship pulled alongside the New Horizon. His voice came through the communication system, but it sounded different now. "Dr. Carter, report to the flagship for debriefing." Helen made her way to Zekkar's ship, her injured shoulder aching with each step. She found the commander waiting in his private quarters, along with several other peacekeeper officers. "Sit," Zekker said, gesturing to a chair. "You were injured?" "Fine," Helen replied, but she sat down gratefully. Zekkar studied her for a long moment. "You risked your life for people you had never met." "Of course," Helen said. "They needed help. Your ship was not equipped for rescue operations. You had no training for such missions. You could have been killed." Helen looked at the alien commander, trying to understand what he was getting at. "Commander, what's your point?" "My point," Zekker said slowly, "is that I was wrong about your species." He activated a holographic display showing the rescue operation. Helen could see her own ship making trip after trip, other vessels following her lead, aliens working together to save lives. "We thought your violence made you dangerous," Zekkar continued. "We thought your aggression was a threat to galactic peace. But we were looking at the wrong thing." "What do you mean?" "Your violence is not random. It is not cruel. It's protective. You fight not because you enjoy destruction, but because you cannot stand to see others suffer." Helen felt tears forming in her eyes. "We're not perfect. We make mistakes. We fight each other sometimes." "So do we," Zekkar admitted. "Is that when others are in danger, you act. You do not debate. You do not form committees. You do not wait for permission. You see suffering, and you stop it." The commander stood and walked to the window, looking out at the rescued ships. "Today, you coordinated the largest rescue operation in our history. You saved 3,000 lives. You did it without hesitation, without thought of reward, without consideration of the political consequences." "We did what anyone would do," Helen said quietly. "No," Zekkar replied. "You did what humans would do. And perhaps that is exactly what the galaxy needs." 2 days later, Helen stood before the full Galactic Harmony Council. The Great Chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds, all waiting to hear the verdict on humanity's application for membership. Ambassador Veltar rose. From the central podium, its musical voice carrying across the vast space. "The Council has reached a decision regarding the human application." Helen held her breath. "We have learned that humanity brings something to our alliance that we did not know we needed," Veltar continued. "You bring the strength to act when action is required. You bring the courage to sacrifice for others. You bring the wisdom that sometimes peace must be defended."